Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Art Talks held by the Institute for Australian Chinese Arts and Culture at Western Sydney University. I'm Professor Jing Han, the director of this institute. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge that we are on the land of the Darug people, who are the traditional owners of their land for thousands of years, and pay our respect to the First Nations elders, past, present, and emerging. Today, we are so pleased to hold this long-awaited art talk, Rethinking the Chinese Art Curator's Role, a case study in Australia by Yin Cao. We have to reschedule her talk several times due to our and her clashed commitments, but we wouldn't let her go until she gives this valuable talk. Many people know or know of Yin, so just a brief introduction. Yin Cao has been the curator of Chinese art at Art Gallery New South Wales since August 2011. It's been there for a long time. She was trained as an archaeologist at Peking University and Harvard University, and took part in several archaeological excavations in China and in Israel. She received museum management training in Washington, D.C., and worked at the University Museum of the National University of Singapore, and also worked in Japan. She has curated numerous exhibitions both in China, Singapore, and Australia, including the 4 major exhibitions at Art Gallery of New South Wales, which she will talk about in the lecture. At the end of the talk, we will have questions from the audience. So please post your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen while during the talk by Yin. So now please welcome Yin Cao to give her presentation.
Hello. Can you hear me, Jing?
Yes, clearly.
Yes, hi. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, 5 o'clock. Thank you very much, Jing, for your warm introduction. I would like to begin today by acknowledging the Gadigal and the Wangal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which I am giving this talk, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, emerging. And I would also like to thank IAC and Professor Han for inviting me to share with you about some of the work I have done at Art Gallery of New South Wales, as well as some reflections. Since the title of my talk is Rethinking Chinese Art Curator's Role, it implies that what I think now about the role is a bit different from the past. So let me start by talking about my understanding of this role of 13 years ago when I applied for the job. I'm just going to share my screen. As Jing in its introduction, I studied archaeology and anthropology in universities. Later, I had some museology training as well as working experience in various museums. My understanding of a curator's duties was very traditional to begin with, which include acquiring an artwork for the museum, supervising its preservation in store and displaying it, putting it on exhibition. Since late 1970s, China had started to send blockbuster archaeological exhibitions overseas, which were quite different from the permanent displays of museum collections. For example, in 1977, the Art Gallery was among a number of state art museums in Australia to host the blockbuster exhibition from China, entitled The Chinese Exhibition, a selection of recent archaeological finds of the People's Republic of China. The show, organized by the Australian Art Exhibitions Corporation and the Australia-China Councils of the Arts, attracted 595,000 visitors across the country. As you could see in this slide, Art Gallery of New South Wales had an excellent record of putting on long exhibitions from China. Edmund Capon was the director for 33 years. I remember how much I envied my predecessor, Dr. Liu Yang, who could work under a director who was a Chinese scholar. So when Dr. Liu's job became available in 2011, I immediately applied and was very lucky to be recruited. Little I knew that Edmund retired half a year later. I was actually, I was quite thrilled and very ambitious and determined to continue Edmund and Liu Yang's legacy to bring more archaeological exhibitions from China to New South Wales. After reviewing the history of the long archaeological exhibitions, where you can see a list of them on the screen, I noticed that most of the exhibitions we had concentrated on early China, such as archaeological findings of Bronze Age and the Qing Dynasty. You could see we had two terracotta army exhibitions, with only one exception, the exhibition, The Lost Buddha, which showed works from Qingzhou of Shandong province. And most dated, the works in that exhibition dated to Northern Wei and Qi dynasty of the 6th century. I formed the view after I joined the gallery that in order to show the diversity and the continuity of Chinese culture, we should show archaeological findings of later periods, i.e. post-Northern dynasties. And this proposal was supported by the gallery, especially by Dr. Michael Brand, who became the new director in 2012. Specializing originally in the art of India and the Islamic world, Michael's interest in engaging China was unswerving from the beginning of his leadership. I have been fortunate and grateful to receive his ongoing support since 2012. So that's a picture of Michael at the opening of my first exhibition, The Silk Road Saga. So in 2013, we held a Silk Road Saga, the sarcophagus of Yu Hong exhibition. It tells the story of a Central Asian diplomat during the height of the Silk Road's importance. Named Yu Hong, the envoy, he lived in the second half of the 6th century, which you could see connected with the Lost Buddha, which also dated in the 6th. So I feel like I immediately joined the dots, with the previous exhibition. So Yu Hong lived in China in the 6th century, when the interactions between the East and the West flourished along this Silk Road. The coexistence of the traditional Chinese and the Western cultural elements on the artifacts in the exhibition suggests a period exceptional openness when different ideas, religions, and art styles intermingled, were absorbed, and ultimately transformed each other. So these are some slides from the exhibition. We borrowed a part of the Yu Hong's sarcophagus. And you can see that most of the motifs on the sarcophagus, they are very Sogdian and the Western Central Asian themes. Following the Silk Road Saga exhibition, we organized the 2016 Tang exhibition, Tang Treasures from the Silk Road Capital, focusing on life in Chang'an during the Tang Empire. 135 works on display demonstrate exceptional craftsmanship and storytelling power, including a 9th century tea grinder that belonged to Emperor Xizong. Each of the artifacts in the exhibition carries a story from this extraordinary city. from the elevation of the tea drinking to an art form, the booming artisanship in gold, silver, and ceramics, to great innovations in Chinese fashion and music. So this exhibition was very well received by the main media, both Chinese and the Western media in Australia. So the exhibition actually occupied two gallery spaces inside the gallery at Upper Asian. Back then was called Upper Asia Gallery and Lower Asia Gallery. So in the Upper Asia, there are three themes in the gallery. So the first was the Chang'an, the cosmopolitan capital. We started the show by putting two artifacts, a Tang Dynasty figurines of a man and a woman welcoming everyone. And then, so this is a view of the Chang'an, a cosmopolitan city. And then the second part of the gallery is the luxury lifestyles of the Tang elite, with silvers and jade and pieces and beautiful. We also invited the prominent Chinese calligrapher, Miss Liang Xiaoping, to compose this calligraphy, 12 meters long calligraphy work for the exhibition, just to show, as many of you know, Chinese calligraphy reached its peak in the Tang Dynasty. I was very proud that even back then, like I put out maybe quite early feminist sort of consideration. So the third part of the Upper Asian Gallery of the Tang Dynasty brought to light the fascinating lifestyle of the women of Chang'an. The diverse culture of Chang'an during the Tang Dynasty was emblematic of a time of great tolerance and openness that saw women gain a remarkable increase in freedom. So the epics of this empowerment was the more than 20-year reign of Empress Wu Zetian, the only female sovereign in Chinese dynastic history. Women were also increasingly represented in art during the Tang Dynasty. And then here we have some images from the lower part of the exhibition in Lower Asia, which has three parts as well. One is the first is about the plural, different religious beliefs during the Tang Dynasty, including Buddhism and Taoism, and even Western, like Christianity first introduced in China. And then the second part was some of the treasures from the Famen Temple in Shanxi, the vault, underground vault. We borrowed some really beautiful silverwares, including a set of tea wares. And then the third part showcased the burial customs in Tang Dynasty, with a lot of figurines and some enlarged images of mural paintings. And also the last part was actually received, I was quite like thinking behind, now, 8 years ago, we started already to implement or to use the digital technology to show the historical work. So this is it's called the Pure Land inside the Mogao grottos at Dunhuang. It's an augmented reality installations to show the cave 220, which is early built in early Tang Dynasty. So it was very welcomed by young and old. You can see this is a family of grandma with a grandchild, both experience this augmented reality. I remember John McDonald in his review, he did mention that this sort of combining high tech with the historical might be a trend of later exhibition, which actually has become true. Yeah, and with the exhibition, we also organized like a symposium and talks, and we invited the scholars from Harvard, from Canada, from Chicago University to give like lectures and papers to deepen, broaden the view, people's understanding of the Tang dynasty. We were also very fortunate then to get to work with the Confucius Institute back then to invite the #1 like pipa player in the world, like a woman, to give a lecture, to give a concert at the end of this exhibition. When I was preparing for the exhibition, Tang exhibition, an opportunity of working with the Taipei Palace Museum came up. So en route to Xi'an to select objects for the Tang exhibition in 2015, I stopped in Taipei to meet with the director of Mingzhu and other staff to discuss the possibility of holding an exhibition. It was a secret mission back then. So originally, I was hoping to continue this, as I said, like the chronology of Chinese history, to study, start from the Northern Dynasty and the Tang Dynasty. Of course, after that was Song and the Yuan Dynasty, because as many of you know, the best of the art, Song and Yuan Dynasty's art was in the Taipei Palace Museum's collection. So, when I got there and I presented a list of my wish list, and I was told many of the Song and the Yuan artworks on my list were not allowed to leave Taiwan. So that was a little bit of like pouring cold water on my head. So I decided to focus on the Tang exhibition and put aside the thought of the Palace Museum show. And in 2017, when I went back to Taipei and continued the discussion with the staff at the Palace Museum's leadership group, we actually, in the end, came up with this idea to actually do a much bigger exhibition instead of just focusing on Song and Yuan, to do an exhibition around the very core, like fundamental philosophical thought of Chinese philosophy, which means, which is called 天人合一, the harmony between, heaven, nature, and the humans, to live together, harmony. Back then, as you may remember, 17 and 18, the environmental issues, it's a hot topic. So I wanted to show, like how Chinese in the ancient time approach this issue, ecological issue. So this exhibition is called Heaven and Earth. The treasures from the National Palace Museum was the first exhibition in Australia from the National Palace Museum. Actually, as I've told you, I've spoken before, Australia is probably one of the 6 or 7 countries that can show Palace Museum's works due to some political reasons. So this exhibition celebrated the rich heritage of Chinese culture through the fundamental philosophical concept, as I said, 天人合一, and we borrowed 150 artworks, including paintings, calligraphy, illustrated books, bronzes, jade, and wood carvings, and ceramics. And I was told, as in the Palace Museums, their system, they have the national treasure, and first grade, like the first grade, second grade. We had actually quite a high percentage of the national treasure and important treasure objects coming to Australia. So this is we continued our tradition of implementing digital art. So when you enter the exhibition, there was a digital engaging digital installation based on a Song Dynasty painting. And then the exhibition is divided in 4 sections. The first section is about heaven and earth. So works in this section started from Neolithic period to the Qing Dynasty, showing, the Chinese belief in heaven and earth. And then secondly, of course, we love China had 4 seasons, not like 6 seasons here in Australia, I assume. So we presented the artworks to reflect, the Chinese artists, how they view, the season and how they see humans, to live in harmony with nature. And then this is the section where I sort of quite my colleagues in Taiwan still think this is the best way to show the treasure in the 3 famous treasures in the Palace Museum collection, the pork. Interestingly, back in 2019 is the year of the pig. So it was very timely, like we had the pig, of the pork, the famous pork. I remember my colleague who went to pack the works, and they had to put a sign in a gallery saying the pork is currently on display in Art Gallery of New South Wales. So apologetically saying, I'm sorry, because as many Chinese people know, if you visited the Taipei Palace Museum, 3 things you must see is the cabbage and the pork. Unfortunately, I had to apologize for those who went all the way to Taipei Palace Museum for 3 months. It was actually in Sydney. One of my friends actually from Sydney went to there to see it without knowing it was here. So it was quite interesting. And then so the 4th part is the landscape. As we all know, landscape paintings holds a very high position in Chinese art. So we show some very famous Chinese artists, including Tang Yin, several, now all the names is going to skip me, but you can see from the catalog, we do still have the catalog, yeah. So that was actually, as I said, one of the duties for the Curator of Chinese Art is to organize exhibition. So what I talked about just now was the loaned exhibition, or we call it temporary exhibition. But in between these temporary exhibition, I also had the duty or obligation to show our collection. So you can see those the 3 exhibitions are highlighted, and in between I organized the other collection, we call collection shows or collection of exhibitions. For example, so 2012, there was a Year of Dragon, 12 years ago. So I organized the show titled The Dragon, just using our collections from Chinese collection, Japanese collection, and also Southeast Asian collection. And also that is in 2014, I think, I organized an exhibition to commemorate, also to celebrate the 30 years of the Goldie Sternberg, Edward and Goldie Sternberg, the couple who established the Chinese Art Fund. With that fund, we actually acquired a good number of Chinese artworks. So we put them all out, and including some of the loans, they are still in the gallery. So this also, we are very grateful for all the individuals, the collectors and scholars who continue to donate works to the gallery. That is one of the main sources for our acquisitions. I'll talk about a bit later. And 2015, also in 2013 or 2014, if I remember clearly, the Asian art used to be an independent department, and in 2013 we actually merged into the international art department. So so we no longer have an Asian department. But we also, that helped to work closely with the other colleagues in the International Art Department. And also that's around that time, we started to combine or mix, both the historical art with contemporary artworks. So the curators in the Asian team, we no longer the department, work together to create this exhibition called Conversations through the Asian Collection. So we have both, as you can see, in this is in Upper Asia, and the long case, we have Chinese ceramics that I organized from Neolithic period all the way to Qing Dynasty, representing each historical period. But in the middle, you can see in the picture in the middle of the image, is a Coca-Cola that was actually by Ai Weiwei. He, painted, like Ai Weiwei sometimes commented on the Chinese history in China. His work, his famous work is to job a Han Dynasty urns, trying to make a point, So that's actually is the time I started to think, no longer I should expand my knowledge of presenting Chinese art, not just focusing on the history, even if my specialty is, historical art. So that it is a quite interesting learning curve for me, but I'm still learning actually at this stage. Yeah, and so this is some other conversations I organized, monochrome ceramics and some jade pieces, the dialogue, between the historical jade pieces, historical ceramics with the contemporary ceramic artworks. And this is another artwork. This is a pure contemporary. I would say my first contemporary art exhibition is called Chinese Bible. So this comes from the subtitle of the exhibition is called Revolution and Art in China. So the core of this exhibition is this installation work accompanied by a video work by Yang Zhichao. So this installation work is a 3,000 notebook dated from 1949 to 1999. It's gifted to us by the Jane Sherman, very generous. So it was interesting experience. Originally, this exhibition was going to be in Upper Asia, was much larger, but due to the gallery's schedule of different exhibitions, so we put this exhibition was put in this very beautiful space. To me, actually, I quite like it because this space has that kind of religious, solemn kind of feelings. It fits very well with this Chinese Bible theme. Yeah, so this exhibition was during the COVID. I used to go to China every year to, visit museums and talk to colleagues in China to, develop or forge ideas of exhibitions. But during the COVID for 3 years, I couldn't go. So what I was able to do, as we say in Chinese, 纸上谈兵. So I just, I looked into the collection and I found out, a lot of our artworks related to food. So that's why I came to the idea about this exhibition called The Way We Eat. So most artwork in this exhibition just come from our collection, ceramics, lacquerware. But also, I was very grateful that the White Rabbit Gallery very generously to lend us some of the contemporary artworks. Yes, so these two, this one is currently on display, is in Upper Asia. It's called Correspondent. And so I was responsible for this whole wall called, maybe it was the influence from my Chinese Bible exhibition. I was still interested in revolutionary art. So this is a group of works that talk about propaganda art. So including some Australian prints. You can see it's got the vote for Communist Party and then some Vietnamese prints, Chinese prints, and also some oil paintings by Shen Jiawei and Zhang Xiaogang. Yeah. And in Lower Asia, currently we have the Elemental exhibition, which is, so I was in charge of the element of earth. So this is the section. We have some ceramics and paintings and some prints. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to switch from exhibition to another duty for a curator of Chinese art is to acquire artworks, as I mentioned earlier. As you can see here, like in the past, as a gallery already since late 19th century, we started to collect Chinese art. So we have quite a wide range of Chinese artworks. And you can see this one is one of the earliest, maybe the second earliest artwork of a rhinoceros horn, gifted to us in 1897. And then it continued. We started to collect Chinese art mainly in the early times by receiving gifts, including this one is from Edie, I think it's called, yeah, the Captain G.W. Edie. It's a group of jade and ceramic work. And we have also famously Sidney Cooper's donation of funeral objects. And we have, we're very grateful for John Happen Myrtle, who is an engineer, but he was an honorary advisor on the Cooper collection and later serving on the art gallery's board of trustees and curating exhibition of Chinese ceramics. And he also gifted his large collection, 145 ceramics, to the gallery. And so when I joined, I continue, as I said, receiving gifts like late James Hayes, continue to give us like a calligraphy work. And this is a set of rubbing that he gifted us, which was included in the town exhibition. And this some gifts from Dr. Zhang Yu, including the brush board and some seals, and also work gifted by Simon Lay, like Professor Peter Rickman and Nancy. This is a Zhang Daqian painting, but with Nancy's mother's name on it. So it's quite special. As I said, we have two ways of acquiring our works: it's gifts and also acquisition, meaning buying art. Growing up in China before the Deng Xiaoping's 改革开放 opening up and reform in 1978, buying art was very unfamiliar to me. It took me quite a few years to come to terms, buying art, especially archaeologically, discovered art. But also because I was trained as an archaeologist, I particularly feel very wrong to acquire ancient objects that have been unearthed illicitly and unscientifically. So I was very cautious in terms of acquiring antiques. So I was very happy and also welcome our new art acquisition policy ratified in 2019 that emphasized the collecting, I quote here, this is our acquisition policy, to be ethical, honorable, responsible, and visible to public scrutiny. We aim to maintain the gallery's reputation for collecting excellence in the public and the museum community, both nationally and internationally. In developing its collection, the gallery will make every effort to ensure that it acquires artworks with a valid title and established provenance, and are authentic and have not been identified as have been looted or illegally obtained or exported. So this has become a really welcoming, and I feel very strong about acquiring any works, either buying or through gifts. So we're very, very diligent and rigorous in this provenance research section. So these are the two artworks, or historical artworks I bought. The reason I bought the one on the left with the jade piece, because it left China in the 1920s, so which fits the UNESCO's Convention on the Means of Prohibiting and Preventing of the illicit import, export, and transfer of ownership of cultural property. So I felt safe to buy this work. and it had been in very prominent collection in the past. Yes, I started to, I still want to acquire artworks with the support of course, with the gallery that relate to Chinese art forms, like ink paintings and ceramic. So this is some work I bought, the ink art, which has, we can say, continue that ink art tradition. And this is the famous Xian's work. And this is a Guanwei's work I bought actually from after seeing your show in your place. Yeah, yeah. And of course, recently, the gallery has encouraged us to purchase more works by women. Because when we look at the Chinese art collection, there is a inequity, like mostly a man, so acquiring a bit more artwork. For example, Xiao Lu's work, and this is recently purchased from Vermilion Gallery. It's the Tao Aimin's work. We just put it out on Friday, so you're welcome to come have a look. Yeah. And also, we'd like to expand our work to like a queer artist. So this is like a Lu Yang, the video work and the entrance of the Lower Asia. It was being very received very well by the young people. Yeah. As I also said, like in my introduction, traditionally, a curator also is responsible for the preservation, although we are not conservator. But I feel like I had both the connection and network in terms of conserving Chinese material, like lacquerware and textile, which in China, Chinese conservators have lots of experience. So when I visited the Palace Museum, which has the state of art of conservation facility, I actually organized some conservation project with Palace Museum. We were going to send our conservator to China. Unfortunately, during the COVID, we could not proceed. But we didn't give up. So we did actually, which is also, I think, a pioneer and did the conservation over the Zoom. So this is our former colleague, Carrie. She's a specialist in textile. So here she's actually discussing how to conserve this textile rank badge with the experts in Palace Museum. So with the Zoom, like Zoom in, we talked about the problem, yeah, and then they suggest that way. So this is about lacquerware. So this was quite helpful. And also, as an art curator, I feel like sometimes in a very critical time, you have to voice some of the injustice. So during the lockdown, when a lot of Chinese Australians were mistreated, so I posted this on our Together in Art project, talking about the Chinese artists were not able to come due to the lockdown, and also to talk about, a little bit of, unkindness and abuse the Chinese Australian received. So I think I'm going to conclude. As I said in my abstract, with the new definition being adopted by International Council of Museum in 2022, in which a museum is expected to be in service of a broader society and its audience with the diverse culture and social political backgrounds. A curator in a public museum is required to re-evaluate his, her, or their role to meet the new challenge and opportunity. A curator is one active member of a museum team whose goal is to offer varied experience for education, enjoyment, reflection, and knowledge, sharing through exhibition and public engagement programs, which reflect the broader community's interest. So I think this is also my goal, to continue to be a curator of Chinese arts, following this kind of very inspiring thought. But also I'd like to quote I think in a book called Curatorial Activism. There's a scholar, a museological scholar, Maura Rayleigh. She came up with this term called curatorial activist. Say a term, I quote, I used to describe people who have dedicated their curatorial endeavors almost exclusively to visual culture in, of, and from the margins. That is, to artists who are non-white, non-Euro-US, as well as women, feminist, and queer identity. So I feel like this is a new trend of young curators. Although I'm not that young anymore, but I want to catch up as much as I can. And then this is, again, this is also my motto for, also I used it for the advertisement material, a calligraphy work in the Palace Museum's show. Do not cultivate arrogance, do not indulge in desires, do not leave ambitions unchecked, do not let pressures go extreme. So thank you very much.
Wow, Ying, it's really, really interesting. I enjoyed every single bit that you're talking about, and it's really insightful and very candid talk as well. So, and to get us to know a lot more about what you do and what a public museum's role, and, you know, specifically Chinese curator. So we will take questions from the audience, and if you have any questions, just post on the Q&A. But before I go to them, I will indulge myself to ask 2 questions first. And by the way, I really like what you have quoted the last 4 lines as your motto. You know, like the way you adhere as your principle. That's very much of you. So, you know, the person that I know is just really remarkable and quite fascinating. I also like, because I went to Taipei a few times and I can visualize the sign would say the pork is missing, you know, so it's really interesting. 2 questions. One is when you do the collection or when people donate, you know, people donate, they can be random in a way because they gift you. But when you acquire, when you buy them, as you mentioned at the end part, you buy as well. When you buy, how do you make sure that they are not random in a way?
Yeah, that's what I said, like in we're very glad like we start now have a collecting policy, you know, like not only for the illegal, for the, you know, ethic part, but also we'd like to collect work that has, you know, the artist which has international reputations, you know, because as an art gallery, it's not like a private collection. So you want your collection to be judged, you know, both nationally and internationally, you know, as a state gallery, right? You expect, you know, your art collections tells about your mission of your gallery and also the depth and knowledge of your collection and then your curatorial research. So I think that's why, you know, when we buy artworks, especially contemporary artworks, so we would look at artists, you know, their status, you know, and their how many exhibitions internationally and nationally, you know, and how many art museums have collected them, you know. So we want to place us as you know, with the very other important, you know, top museums. So that is quite, we aim high, I have to say. Yeah, so that's one of the for contemporary artworks. But as I said, for historical, we're very careful right now because of not only the provenance issues and also the, you know, forged, you know, like fakes, a lot of them in the world. So, we're not saying we're not buying historical art, but, you know, we have to be very vigilant, and also that artwork can speak to our audience and also the rest of the collection. Yeah.
Indeed, you mentioned about especially acquiring antique, you know, ancient ones, and the ethical is as well as, you know, fraud. fake ones. So it's really treacherous water that you have to
Yes.
very carefully. And you know, there are so many fakes. And the other day on Netflix, talking about Da Vinci, the deer painting. So I find it's fascinating.
Yeah.
So many ways you have to look at it. So yeah, you have to be very cautious. So
yeah. And also the gallery has a very rigorous, you know, like a process of acquisition. So that's why, you know, it takes a long time. People say, okay, I want to give you something. But I said, no, it's like a stage by stage, you know, we're very diligent in our research and, you know, our approach.
Yeah, so it's not like, oh, by the way, here's the gift. So it's
no,
not like
no,
a simple.
yes, yeah. So we have to write really long reports and check on every details and also the due diligence, you know, all we have to do those research. Yeah.
And you mentioned so many roles, especially now. So, you know, so it's not just curating as you first originally thought so, and then curating, educator, you know, acquisition, and including Louise Guest actually mentioned curatorial activism. So all these roles, which one do you find the most challenging?
It has a different actually, how do you say? I mean, in terms of workload, organizing an exhibition is quite is a long time, and then you know it's of course you have a big ideas, but also you have to go down to nitty-gritty labels, each labels, and you got to check, you know, the media what is that in terms of time consuming. But I think I enjoy all of them. As I said, it has both opportunity and challenge, you know, but also try to, as this time, you know, also engaging with the community, Chinese community is quite enjoyable. You know, I go to a lot of openings. I think I see you a lot, you know. So I feel like in Sydney, we're very lucky to have a large group of Chinese people who enjoy art, you know, to want to be part of it. So we have a very healthy, you know, art communities in Sydney, you know. And of course, in terms of acquisition, it's sometimes I wish I have more time, you know, on acquisition, so I can acquire more works for art collection. It's but we do have both financial restrictions because since 1991, the state government has cut, no longer supporting us for acquisition, the fund. So we have to raise fund for any acquisitions. So I would say fundraising is that's a part of my work. It's probably most difficult because you try to put your time in, but sometimes you don't get any. You probably also feel the same way. People, yes, it is an interesting work. You know, it's a job, but as my husband said, I work in the most beautiful settings. I can't complain. So I'll stop here.
That's right. I actually have another question before I go to Fan Dongwang. You know, when you do the curating and you select artworks to be exhibited, and when you select, obviously you have good reason to say which one to go to. But do you often think of those that you didn't select? And do you have to have a reason not to select? And for those that you didn't select, sometimes would that bother you?
I think it's for me. I think we have a relatively smaller collection. Sometimes actually, I wish we had more. I get more selected because there are many issues involved in here. For example, just simply from the conservation point of view, in a gallery, we have to rotate works on organic material, like works on paper, textile, every 3 or 4 months. So sometimes when I select, I have to select, if I have like several changeovers, I have to make sure I have enough, because once you set up an exhibition in a framework, you need to keep on filling in, you know, you have to make sure. I think I do, of course, sometimes I wish I can borrow more works from other institutions. As I said, for the way we eat, we're very lucky. The White Rabbit was quite supportive. I hope we can continue that kind of collaboration. So yeah, and also when you design, you also have restriction of a space and you know, the height, and then the case is big, you know, so that's all part of the consideration, you know, sometimes restrict you, you know, you want to use it, and somehow you don't have. I remember I want to show this 4 scroll paintings, but somehow we don't have enough perspective cover to protect it. So yeah, it's a lot of factors affect to affect, you know, like, you know, my selection, you know. So that's why I said it's quite interesting. And but when you deal with the long exhibition, like when I did the Tang exhibition, I was very lucky to be able to go into the storage. I said, I want this, I want that, I want that. And then I came back and I was saying, like, no, you can't. You only have 500 square meters space. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's a big question. Thank you for asking, but it's case by case.
Yeah, I suppose so. And I think they all, I mean, challenge, you know, like the obviously challenges, but also kind of a good challenge, a pleasure, you know. So
yeah.
Interesting. Dr. Van Dongwang asked, what are the best new discoveries of the ancient art in China recently? That's a very big question.
Big questions. Yeah, I mean, I've tried to keep up with it. Every year, China has this like a top 10, you know, like archaeological discoveries. I think the most, as I said, I wish I was able to go to China more often, but I'm still trying to catch up, you know, the new discoveries like Sanxin Dui, you know, and then in the Jiangxi province, you know, there's the Han Dynasty tomb. There are still lots of them, you know. But I think that right now, I'm just looking at all these different archaeologists WeChat group, you know, they are away from, you know, looking for treasures, you know, we're doing more, archaeologists in China doing more systematic kind of archaeology, like a research, like settlement, to help us to understand not just the treasures of the past, but also the anthropological issues, you know, like a human, the social structures, and then, you know, the settlement. And then, for example, the Liangzhu culture, which was my dissertation on, you know, had a lot of new discoveries. I wish I can go back soon to do more. Yeah, I think if you, Dr. Fan, if you want to know more, is it to keep eyes on the WeChat, you know, the fundings. Yeah. Yeah.
We also have a question from Professor John Clark. How well do you collaborate with other Australian museums? We have yet to see a joint exhibition of the modern Chinese prints from the 4 major collections we already have: GA and GV, New South Wales, and Sydney University. Can we hope this will happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, John, you had a Prince exhibition at the Sydney Uni for the inaugural exhibition. To be honest, I try to work with other institutions in Australia, like, for example, for the CCW Museum in Sydney Uni, we lend quite a large number of artworks to their Chinese gallery. Worked with the Suxia very well. I think for her paper exhibition, we were, you know, she wanted to borrow something. Unfortunately, we were not able to lend because during the Sydney Modern period, and then the staff issue, you know, so we couldn't. But I look forward to working more collaboratively with other museums in Australia. Of course, we all have our strengths, but also we are lacking in certain areas. I think the gallery is encouraging, like, other institutions to borrow, we're willing to lend our works as long as the borrowing institution reach the acquirement of our galleries, standard. So yeah, I'm very open for collaborations. I know some museums in this country, it's very competitive. They want to be exclusive. But I think from our director, it's always quite open. Of course, we'd like to have exclusive exhibitions, but however, I think in terms of borrowing and lending collections, we're quite open. Hopefully we can do a print exhibition, in the future, John.
I just have a couple of quick ones before we let you go. This is a golden opportunity to ask. You curated archaeological exhibitions and contemporary art exhibitions. Which one you found easier?
It's a good question. I was actually talking about it. It has both its pros and cons, like for historical art, because all the creator of the artworks and, all dead people, you couldn't talk to them. So you have a better sort of like easier to you got to interpret. Of course, you're based on scientific research and really good scholarship. But however, there are a lot of hypothesis in there. You just like no matter how hard you look for materials to support your interpretation, they're still not original. And then that actually it's opposite when you work with the contemporary artists, because they're there, they can tell you their intention of creating this art and then the meanings, so as I said, it's quite different the way, I always think, if it's a contemporary artwork, if the artist still alive, we act just as a facilitator, or like to help them to present artwork, and it's their work. As a curator, we actually to support them to present their artworks instead of manipulating their, creation. So that's my view of some other, just different, yeah.
Okay. Can you talk about your next exhibition or not?
I can tell you there will be a big exhibition from China, and it will be in a new building. It's Louis Bourgeois, the exhibition, but I hasn't been officially announced. But stay tuned. We will probably announce next month, very soon. Okay. Yeah.
Excellent. Last one. Who is on your wish list for you to curate? Which artist?
As I said, like we really focusing on, diversities, probably female artists, I'd like which hadn't had enough opportunity to present, especially Chinese and female artists. So I remember going back to China last November. I was very annoyed to see in an exhibition it's like 25 artists, it's like a historical survey, and only 2 female artists. So I was very, unhappy about that. So I hope, we will be doing more and to showcase more Chinese female artists, both historically and, contemporary. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Yin. We really enjoyed every bit that you talked about. It's really interesting. Thank you so much for such a thorough preparation. And I'm so pleased we insisted to have you. And now we finally had you, and it's all worth it. Thank you so much. Really,
thank you. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and thank everyone for your patience, and have a good evening.
Yeah. Thank you. And our next art talk will be by Simon Chan. We will send out the invitation. So thank you, Yin, and thank you everyone who has attended. We will also send the recording of this to everyone who have registered. So have a good evening. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.